I'm going to show you only one of many different types of lids and flanging systems for lidded jars. In this case, the size and shape of the jar that I'm creating is actually going to be a teapot body. For a complete listing of flange types, refer to this section in the Valve Cushing Handbook. So what I'm starting with here is about 3 pounds of clay, and for the best fit, start with one wedged ball and simply cut off half-pound balls for your lid. This will ensure that they both shrink at the same rate because you're starting with clay that's the same consistency. And what I have here is pretty much as we started the stacked face. I have 2.5 pounds of clay open to a thin, flat bottom. It's a 1/4 inch bottom. And I have extra thickness at the top edge, so I have about a 1/2 inch thickness at this top edge. Now I'm ready to split the rim to create the flange. And what I'm going to be doing is gently supporting it with wet fingertips along the bottom side. And I'm going to take my forefinger and I'm simply going to push down. And as I push down, I'm creating a little 90-degree indent. And this will function to seat my lid. The next step is I use a wooden rib just to true this up to a nice 90-degree angle, because it has a nice square edge that my finger doesn't. Now make sure that this inside edge of this lip is a nice rounded edge. Make sure that it's strong, that it's not going to chip. And if I have any intention of flipping this jar over to trim it, make sure this top edge is not fragile. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is make measurements with my calipers. And this is important to do right away because as soon as the clay starts to dry, it starts to shrink. I'm going to be making 2 measurements. One measurement is the maximum diameter of my lid. And I would recommend that you jot down these measurements in your sketchbook so that you have them for future reference. The other measurement that I'm making is inside this flange, and I'm just giving myself a little bit of leeway, just an 1/8 inch leeway. And this is the section of the lid that's going to actually go down into the jar. And in my case, since this is going to be a teapot, when I tip the teapot over, it prevents the lid from tumbling off. So I have my 2 measurements. Also notice that I'm leaving my jar on the bat, so I'm not removing it from the bat. And this just makes trimming a little bit easier. Now it's time to make the lid. And notice I have 2 balls of clay here. If you've never made lids before, I really do recommend making an extra lid. You'll be glad you did. Think of a lid as a miniature bowl. And what we're doing here is we're throwing the lid upside down. So the depth of the bowl equals the height of the lid. And it's always best to have at least a shallow curve. If you have a very flat curve or no curve, the lid tends to warp. It's not very strong. So I'm going to center it low and wide and open it as I would a small bowl. leave yourself between 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch at the base of this small bowl. If you leave yourself enough clay, then you can simply trim the knob out. So I'm compressing a nice bowl-shaped bottom to prevent cracking. And what I have here is actually a bowl that's narrower than my lid. And the reason for this is that I'm going to be splitting the rim of this bowl. To split the rim, I gently support it on the inside with a wet finger, and I push down. The part that's left standing is what's going to keep this lid in position. Again, can use the wooden rib to chew it up to a nice 90-degree angle. So this is the part that's going to fit inside of my jar. And since I'm making a teapot, this lip is a little bit longer than normal, again to keep it in position when you tip the teapot over. Now I just need to adjust the outside of the lid. So here I have my maximum diameter measurement. See that I need to cut it down a little bit. I'm just gently supporting it on the underside with a wet finger and using my pin tool. Just gently slice down until it contacts my finger. Need to remove a little bit more. A lid that fits well is the result of careful measurement. So measure, measure, and measure again. Keep double checking yourself. And as long as you carefully measure, resist the urge to make any adjustments as the lid and the pot is drying. Really just trust your judgment, because it's probably that the lid and the jar are drying at different rates. I can also use my trim tool to remove a little bit of clay. Okay, we're happy with that. So now we're going to let both sections dry into the leather hard state.